And we're back.
I like how we just looked at each other like, who's going to say something first?
Who's gonna say? I'll always say something first.
Okay.
Ask me if I have selfie. I don't have a selfie. I know me. I don't need a self-me.
He was talking about how he'd never taken a
I don't take
selfie.
selfies.
Never taken one.
The only time I do
I
if
don't
it's
believe
in
it.
some kind of perverted, kind of weird way in a bathroom somewhere. I'm
Oh.
just totally kidding.
I know you weren't. No, I feel like that's probably why selfies are a thing you've done.
So tomorrow is
Dang.
the Giving of Thanks Day.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about why we're grateful.
We're grateful we are. That's
No.
coming up tonight.
No.
I don't think so.
I just thought that would be
So I would like to
silly.
say, I think is really cool is we've been getting a lot of punches in our numbers. People are watching more. Thank you guys for tuning in every week and signing up on the Facebook group and all that good stuff. There's been some really, really great people that have actually signed in and sent us some really cool messages.
And we have a new crew member, Grace.
And Grace is on board to make sure that we don't lag anymore.
That we don't, yeah.
We
We're
don't
getting
lag
it
anymore.
together. We're gonna have a smooth operation any day now.
And I do want to make a shout out to Christopher Hall. Christopher Hall is from the UK.
Hi.
And he tunes in. He texted me on Facebook Messenger over the weekend, and it was really awesome that we get to actually connect a little bit.
I love it.
To know that we're getting out that far, that's a really great thing.
Yeah.
Because it's hookups for people we know in Britain, because when we want to get the heck out of here, we can get there and we'll know people.
Right.
Yay, Christopher. No, I'm just
Yay.
kidding. But it is great to have you on board, Christopher. Thank you for your calls and all that good stuff.
Awesome.
So what's up with you?
Well, we've got some astrology stuff coming up. So the 30th is a full moon. It's a full moon in Gemini, but it's also an eclipse. And let me tell you something about eclipses and astrology. They're crazy. I have my notes here because I studied the chart earlier, but even without looking at these notes, eclipses have a reputation for making you feel rushed, for making you feel exhausted or high strung, like your emotions are all over the place. Like basically eclipses can make you crazy. They're not necessarily going to make you crazy. When an astrologer talks about what's happening on the full or the new moon, you might not feel it. And, you'll feel it more if basically your chart is getting hit. So if you feel that you're not affected by a full moon, but your friend is, it's just that your charts are getting hit differently. This full moon eclipse in Gemini is at 8 degrees. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a hint so you can figure out your own basically like astrological effects of full or new moons. See what planets you have in your chart between like 5 and 11 degrees. You want to stay kind of like with an eclipse, you want to stay between like 2 and 3 degrees. But that's how you know what planets are being hit. Now, because this is an eclipse and it is in Gemini, we always have to look at how the eclipse is going to affect us. And because Gemini is an air sign, this is going to be like how we understand things, how we think, how we communicate. Is there gossip happening? Gossip and drama has been happening. I've been seeing it, in my friendship circles. I've been seeing it in a lot of places. And I just think to myself, well, that's an eclipse in Gemini, because Gemini is talk and conversation. So the other thing about eclipses is that it's karma. A lot of karma can come through during an eclipse. So if you have been gossiping or if you have been causing trouble, like this is when shit could catch up to you. This is also like, if you've been putting misinformation out there, this is when people start to see that the information, wasn't legit. I'm thinking about almost like politics right now, where it's sort of like Republicans are starting to be like, no, that's not, like, you can't say that, Donald Trump. So these are just sort of examples of how this can manifest. Because the moon is in opposition to the sun, which is in Sagittarius, Sagittariuses might be feeling this a little bit more. And I don't want to like paint a scary picture about eclipses, because they can be really good as well. But they do have this reputation for being a scary thing, because just everything gets a little bit topsy-turvy, turned upside down. I wanted to, and also like you may feel more anxiety, just like anyone. Like this can create more anxiety, especially like of the cerebral kind, because that Gemini moon placement, it just has a lot of that like chattiness. Eclipses are affiliated with like fate and destiny. So this is sort of like fated things happen around this time. Trust your path, try to be good, try to, attach to your higher self. All words that Sal loves. Higher self. And I feel like higher self is one of those words that would make you roll your eyes.
No.
It's not?
No, of course not.
Oh, namaste, Sal. Namaste. Bless you. No.
Anyway, so how are we doing tonight? What's going on? So
nothing. I think that we closed up the astrology section really
Nice.
well. It wasn't awkward, so I like it.
no.
Oh,
It was awkward. It was just good stuff.
it's just good.
Good stuff.
All right, so so I'm the one who's supposed to start to talk about the questions that we had mailed in advance.
Let's get some of these. I want to hear some.
Okay, do we have any coming in live right now? You're in charge of those.
No.
Okay.
No, we're good.
So here's one question that we have. It's for me, and it's about some of the minor aspects in astrology, specifically surrounding quintiles and biquintiles and quincunxes, and they wanted to know how important they are in one chart and how one can use these minor aspects to better understand their natal chart as a whole. And I'm going to say I look at quincunxes, but those are the only things that I look at because I don't like it. Like, I like it when the degrees are measurable by 30 degrees. I don't like it when we start getting into 45 degrees or 15 degrees or anything like that. Most astrological aspects are going to be like sort of like 60, 90, 180 degrees, things like that. And a quincunx, I believe, is 150 degrees. And for that exactness, I do use them. And a quincunx is basically an unbalanced aspect. So if Mercury is quincunx the moon, which I believe it is tomorrow.
Can you spell that for me so I know what
you're
saying?
It's Quincunx, I think. That was from memory. So hopefully I am good at things. But it's an unbalanced aspect. And actually tomorrow morning, the moon will be quincunx Mercury. And one example of how this could work is because the moon is in Aries, and it's our emotions, and Aries is very fiery, and it's like it can kind of rush to respond. And Mercury is the planet of communication. People might be snippy, or people might feel triggered more easily. So that's just sort of like how it's like these planets are lined up, but they're not lined up in a way that is conducive to the energy flowing nicely. Does that make sense?
Not to me, but
okay.
I'm sure to her.
Here's another question. How to get rid of spirits, entities, or energies that are around. I'm just going to read it exactly how they wrote it. I'm trying to like correct it in my mind. Okay. They said, how to get rid of spirits, entities, or energies that is around and often stick to the energy field. I am very sensitive to these types of energies. Since my third eye opened, I constantly have body sensations, either in my head, a tingling, or cold feet. It is almost like they are trying to take my energy out. How do you solve this problem? It's been very challenging for me. Thank you, Diane.
Go.
Well, I think that tingling is usually not bad. If it's tingling, it's usually kind of like a guide, like a healthy guide, trying to let you know that they're around. So I wouldn't be concerned about tingling unless it's like uncomfortable to the point where it feels numbing. But especially if you're feeling it at like the top of your head, that's usually an indication that your crown chakra is opening. If you feel just like a tingling maybe on your arm or something like that, it could just be like, a guide or something on the other side trying to comfort you. It's actually, if you are experiencing this, then you'll want to make sure you watch the entire episode, because I do think that this is a sign that you could be good at psychometry, which is the ability to pull in psychic information through touch. But if you feel like something negative is coming in, just say, I call in my protection. Say it 3 times. I call my protection, I call my protection, I call my protection.
But when you say that, what if you don't have a protection that you call in?
Everyone has a protection, I think. Ancestors or, someone's looking out, I think. I think that everyone's got someone looking out for them. But you could also call on like an archangel as well, or just say I call on the light. Pray to Jesus if you want to, whatever it is that works for you. But just call it in, and I think that helps. And you could do this at any time, even if you're having anxiety while you're driving and you're like, I don't know what's happening. Just say, all right, I call on the light. I feel better. What do you think, Sal?
I'm trying to like wrap my head around it. Like when you start, this all goes back to like psychic self-defense, you know, and rituals that one would do if they were a magician or a ceremonial magician or witch, which is, you know, usually people that have a background in these systems have stuff set up already for that reason. We have guards up. We talked about that before. We talked about that last week, actually, which is where I brought up the LBRP, and you know how when you get involved in doing certain rituals daily, you know, that create that guard around you, things just start deflecting, you know, and if it doesn't deflect and you know it, then you should actually take a moment and do it. You know, get into a space, get into the stall in a bathroom, and a lot of people are like, well, how are you gonna? Even ceremonial magicians and people that are starting to practice, new people especially, they're like, how are you going to do this you say to do it in a bathroom stall? Well, any magician that's practiced knows something. There's what we call the great voice. And the great voice is basically the voice within. And you can literally I could do the entire LBRP in a spot that's, you know, 4x4 square. And just pivot. It's the way you're using resonant tone and pushing the vibration outward with the words, but you can still do it without going yod hey vo hey. You know, it's not like that. It's like you pull
you
that.
You just hear that in the stall next to you.
You pull that down. And they're like, wow, that person really didn't eat right. But you pull that down, and you can, with like a light whisper in the mind. It's the great voice.
Yeah.
And you bring that energy outward, and you can still set your barriers up. But if you're not a ceremonial magician, that doesn't mean that you're TSOL. Everybody's got ways of doing it. You know, psychic self-defense. You first you got to acknowledge try to acknowledge where it's coming from, and then, you know, start to, as you're moving down your path in this world, if you haven't done this already, develop whatever system you need to call in your protection. Mm-hmm. That's why I said that to you. You know, and I wasn't trying to put you on the spot.
No,
my point was
I'm cool with being put on spots.
You need to, like, if you don't know what you're calling in, you know, like, call in and take care of me. What you need to do is invest some time in your guardians and in these powers that you work with. To know that they will be with you when you call them down. That's my point.
Yeah.
And with that, you know, start looking into it. Depending on what system you're involved in. There's a lot of people that are into witchcraft and stuff that don't want anything to do with ceremonial magic, and there's still ways of doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think too, if you're looking for like a psychic sort of answer, like a psychic connection, ask your guides to show you what protects you. You know, like ask for symbols. Like, what is the symbol that like my protective guardian has? And you may notice a lot of flies, or you may notice a lot of butterflies, or you may notice a lot of lizards, or you may notice a lot of snakes. You know what I mean? Like whatever you feel like you're coming in contact with throughout your day to day. That may
create a codex. Create code.
Yeah.
With this being,
totally.
The being your ward or protector.
Yeah.
That when this happens,
I know you're there.
Now you kick in a protective ritual.
Yeah.
And if you don't have one, pick up some good books. And there's really good, strong books out there. Like, again, Psychic Self-Defense by Dion Fortune is a great book for that. You know, read about it and get some knowledge on these things. So, because when you're a person that's got these abilities that you're saying they're newfound to you, with these newfound abilities comes responsibility.
Yeah.
And I'm not pointing a finger at anybody specifically, but when you do have this, and now you know, it's just like the old adage of G.I. Joe: knowing is half the battle. because now you got to get out there and figure out what it is you can do. And asking people like us, that's a great thing to do.
Yeah.
But also there's books. You know, get into some books.
I also like the Empath's Survival Guide by Judith Orlich. That's a good one, especially if this is like something that isn't even happening while you're doing magic. If it's just like you're feeling things attaching to you.
But remember, magic isn't something you do. It's something you are. You don't always do magic. You just are magic.
No, I agree. I think being psychic is magical.
Yeah, I mean, and that doesn't mean it's a special club for magicians.
Yes, it is.
It's not, though. I completely don't think it is, because
I just wanted to be
it's
sassy.
It's just an acknowledgement of self. Really. So what is the next question?
Let's see. In a previous episode, you guys mentioned using urine in magic. Can you explain a little more? What purpose does it serve? Would I use this when hexing or banishing someone? I mean,
not really. When you're using urine, it's usually it's a barrier line.
Yeah.
It's a protective line for you. I mean, you don't need to use. It's not a negative fluid, and a lot of people think, ooh, pee, but actually, let's look at it really. Pee is actually sterile.
Let's dissect this.
It's actually, you know, when you see a cat spraying, they're doing this for a reason. It's marking a line.
Yeah.
And this is what we're doing magically when you use urine in witches' bottles. It's setting up a barrier line. And depending on what other components are in the bottle, then this can also be deemed a little more aggressive or not.
Right.
You know what I mean? If if there's some people out there that have magical situations going on where people are physically or magically attacking, you know, if you use urine and you use broken glass and bent nails, and you put all that in a jar and you urinate in it, cap it, and then bury it on your property or put it someplace outside, maybe in a planter that they won't see it, it sets up it's a defense.
Mm-hmm.
Sets up a defense for you and protects you at the same time.
I also like if I'm gonna put someone's name in the freezer, like if I want to freeze someone, I'll piss on their name first too, just because like I'm dominating the situation, like I'm taking control over this, and it's a sign of dominance.
Well, it is when you do that. I mean, I had a client that came in here, and I don't mean to be kind of grotesque, but I'm going to be, because that's just me.
Yes.
They were very much into the idea of using whatever they need to constantly put a mark on a person that they were having a little magical war with. And the person that was doing this was a plumber. And they literally had such a battle going on for so long that they literally got their toilet bowl, disconnected it from the floor, went into it, hit it with sandblast, took down the gloss, and then shellacked their photograph in the basin.
Whoa.
So whenever they went to the bathroom, it was going on the image.
Jeez Louise.
And then they put it back in. And it, honest to God, they really did do that. And what is that doing? You know what I mean? It's a constant, hit.
That's interesting. That's pretty intense.
It is.
Huh. Do we have some coming through?
I think so, yeah. Scott M., how does DIC magic work? What is DIC?
It's dick magic.
That's not what they're saying.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't.
Okay.
D.I.C. What is that?
It's dick magic.
I don't know what DIC is.
It's dick magic.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
They wouldn't be putting dots after each one.
I promise you I know where that message is coming from, and this person is saying dick magic.
It's Scott.
I know.
Scott, if you don't know how to do dick magic, you really need to get private counsel with me. I charge $350 for the hour, and I'll talk you through it.
I don't like where this has gone.
Can we please go on?
Yes. Okay. All right. Well, I think that concludes questions from the audience. We should just we should talk about the topic at hand, which is sympathetic magic. using the items that once belonged to other people in magical spells. And my little psychic spin on this is I will be talking about psychometry.
So I want you to go ahead and give a little smash on psychometry. Let's try not to put them together yet.
Okay.
Let's just talk about what psychometry is.
So psychometry is the ability to like hold an object and pick up psychic information about it. So this is why sometimes when you go to a medium, they'll ask you to bring something that belonged to the person that has passed away. And it's basically just that, you know, there's a connection between this item and this person, so you're able to pull in that information that way. There are also, it's not always used for mediumship. It can also just be like, you know, if you hold a crystal and you try to think about how it's making you feel, that's a form of psychometry as well. When I am doing a reading and the person I'm reading for is asking me to channel someone who isn't present, I'll write their name down and I'll put my hand over it and I will pull in the energy from this person's name. So I believe that to be a form of it as well. I mean, I think that's kind of like, you know, my spiel on what it is. It's a hard thing to just practice. I think that you have to first become a person who meditates and becomes more aware of what a subtle energy feels like, because I think that you need to be able to see or feel what it is that you're trying to examine before you can actually examine it. So I think step one is, you know, if you wanted to strengthen this, you know, I think it's called pranayana. It's when you do the ball of white light, right?
Okay.
Isn't that what it's called?
Prana.
Yeah.
Is the ball, energy ball, sure.
Yeah. So visualize a ball of energy in your hands and just start to, as a very beginner step, just feel like, okay, what does it feel like when this is on my hands? And then start to push an emotion into that energy. What does that emotion feel like on my hands? A color. You know, that's ways that you can sort of like bam, 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 train it. Now, if you really want to up your game and you wanted to, you know, bring in one of your witchy friends and train with them, this is what I do with my friend Ryan, my best friend in Phoenix. We'll each make a ball of white light, and we'll take turns. And one of us will infuse it with an emotion, and then hand it to the other one. And then, you know, you take the ball of energy and you try to say, oh, okay, this is like, you feel nervous. If you do that, release the ball of energy. You don't have to worry about, oh my God, am I releasing or not? Just do this and let it dissipate. And then if you do have this sort of like energetic exchange that you do with someone, do like a cleansing ritual at the end where you either take like, you know, some cleansing breaths, even if it's just 3, but visualize yourself pushing out anything that you could have picked up is what I would say is a good way to start working with that. A good way to know that you could be sensitive. I think that, you know, it's easy to throw around, oh, I'm clairvoyant, I'm clairsentient, I'm clairaudient, I'm this, I'm that. And yeah, you can be all of those things, but you're going to have a strength and you're going to have, you know, psychic senses that are stronger for you than they are for someone else. So, you know, I think that people who are good at psychometry are the people who are clairsentient, who just sort of know things, will feel something, or like if you're a person who walks into a room and can feel the energy of the room, you're probably going to be, you know, more skilled at psychometry than someone who doesn't pick up on the energies of a room but hears things. Yeah, I think that's my spiel.
You walk in the room and they're like a man of distinction. Whenever you walk in the room. Forget it.
I am going to forget that.
I'm old.
Okay.
I have a kinky in my hip. Okay. So, sympathetic magic. The sympathy. Where does it come from? Well, there's a man named James Fraser. Yes. James Fraser wrote The Golden Bough. The Golden Bough is a great book on all the different mythologies in the world. If you're an aspiring occultist or you want a really good read, and you check out The Golden Bough by James Fraser, because it talks about all different pantheons, and within that, he coined the term sympathetic magic. So, where did it start? So, sympathetic magic is a lot like what was called, and don't take this the wrong way, because we use this word a lot today, homeopathic magic. So the root of homeopathic magic was like helps like. So if you wanted to be really smart back in days of old, they would tell you to eat walnuts. Why? Because when you broke it open, it looked like a brain.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that walnuts are still good for your brain because it's got. No, I think that's like a real thing. I think that there are like specific types of oils that are good for your brain.
So
Omegas.
same thing is lungwort. When you think of lungwort, the herb, when back in the day, lungwort was supposed to heal anything that had to do with respiration, respiratory infection, because when you look at lungwort, it looks like a lung with spots on it. The leaf. Same thing with like animals' hides, bear skin. If you covered bear skin over your son as a young boy, he would be a warrior as he grew older. Now we're talking nomadic magic here. I even read that one form, and this is not the nicest thing to hear, but it's the truth because it was then. If you wanted your daughter, so strange the way they changed people to genders back then, but if you wanted your daughter to be really good in the fields at picking berries and collecting food, they would literally cut a ring shape off of the leg of a beaver.
Why?
The skin. They would peel the skin off the leg of a beaver, and they would have the little girl wear it as a ring. And if she wore this over time, because of the beaver's ability to collect and gather, that she would then become really good at this. So this is where homeopathy came from. Is it like matches like? Okay. So this is the laws of similarities in ancient times. The other thing is one called contagious magic. Okay. It's objects that come in contact with a person automatically holds residual energy of the person that touched it. Therefore, it is imbued with their energies, and this can be used in magical situations. So, the concept of sympathetic magic is both of those. It's both those constructs, okay? So it's the ability to enter another person through a mental state, to enter the mind of or affect. So this is where the concepts of sympathetic magic come from. It was a sympathy. I got some really cool notes on it, but I'm trying to just cut them down a little bit. So what is sympathetic magic? And quite, quote unquote, things that act upon each other, then absorb and are part of the sympathy at hand. So where are we today with that?
It's like a mirror.
Yeah.
Like it's like this affects this. It's like quantum entanglement.
Yes.
Particle
So
A
when you're
particle
starting
B.
to get into this, when we, as magicians and witches, are getting involved, sympathetic magic it is always best. You can always use a photograph, especially nowadays. Things are way easier. If you see a picture of someone online, you snap it and you print it out. We can all do that. Or now, in some places, I mean, specifically not in my coven because my high priestess doesn't allow it, but that's for another story. But you can if you bring a tablet or a phone into circle with you, and have the image projected on the tablet, you then concentrate on that image of that person, and that is a light form of sympathetic magic. Now, it would be a lot better if I was to enchant a person, and the person that wanted the enchantment to happen brought me a t-shirt with sweat in the armpit area, because secretion of fluid is DNA. Mm-hmm. And DNA is really important. So this is where we start to use the DNA of another person and just go ahead and do the work. Now, the thing about this is it's not just, oh, I've got Joe's t-shirt, so I'm going to do this work on them. And you don't just walk up and that, it's not that easy. So this is where you start learning your planetary structure, and you start learning about your herbs and specific oils and how they correlate to the planet and to all the planets. Then you decide which planet, and if you want to bind Joe and you have this shirt, if you make a poppet, what is a poppet? A poppet is a small doll that is created. So another a little side note for those of you, voodoo dolls don't exist. A voodoo doll was made up in media. And it really became prominent in the 70s through the Trilogy of Terror, which was a movie that most of you probably don't know because you're not old enough to remember it, but Karen Black was in it. And there was this little doll that they got, I think it was from like Africa or something like that, and it had wild hair and it had big chompy teeth, and it would have a little knife in its hand and freak out. So this created this voodoo craze. But voodoo dolls, in the voodoo, it really wasn't something they used. What this comes from are things like corn dollies or string dollies. And what it was you'd basically take corn husk and you'd fashion it like you'd make child's toys back in the day, and you'd fashion that, and then you'd stuff it with the clothing of the person or the hair of a person or the secretion somehow that you've gotten. A lot of times, like, you can use things like cigarette butts. As nasty as it sounds, that's their flesh, or their phlegm, going in and out of that cigarette, and you can utilize the cotton in it for sympathetic magic. So you put that in these objects. In my case, I usually fashion it out of a doll of color. The specific color of the doll correlates to the planet that I'm working. And if I'm doing a binding on this person, then I'm using black, okay? Because black is Saturn binds. So then I would go ahead and put these objects within the doll, then seal the doll up. And I would call in the planetary hour and the assigned invocations to Saturn and cause the effect to happen that way. So it's more to it than just getting a doll and being, oh, this is Joe. It doesn't work like that. You've really got to map it out and understand your planetary structure and then commit to your work.
Right.
So that's, in a nutshell, what sympathetic magic is.
I've also sort of held the belief that, like, if you're going to use a puppet, you have to, like, breathe life into it before you do your work too.
I do that as well. Yeah. Very much so. Breathing life into it is very important, and a lot of times and it's great for binding as well. You use mullein, because mullein is very, very much associated with lungs and respiratory. So what you do is you stuff the herb into the cavity, the hollow cavity. Now, it's just really hard. I mean, I have a specific mold that I spent almost $500 on to create these dolls. So when the wax seals and it hardens and you take it out of the mold, it leaves a cavity in the chest area that I can then pack with whatever I want, whether it be a photograph or, in this case, mullein. And you take the mullein and I would pack it in, but then I would draw a hole through the top of the head. And the mold that I have also makes gaps for the mouth and the eyes. So they're plugged. So when you pull them out, those are now vacant of wax. And so you draw and you put a nail through the top of the head, and that will go right into the mouth hole. And then you push that further, and it'll go into the chest cavity. You pack it with mullein, you light it on fire, and you can do one of two things. You can put a straw in the mouth and draw to bring smoke up through the throat and out the mouth, which is really intense looking. Or you can breathe in the mullein or the herb that you're using within a straw, cap it, and then blow that into. And when you do, there's certain incantations that I will not divulge to activate this doll and bring it to life. And then you treat it human. the key is to not forget that it's human now. This is an egregor. Okay, it's an egregor of sorts. It's not unlike the golem that you hear about in Hebrew mysticism. The golem was activated for a purpose of defense, and then there were certain glyphs and Hebrew letters that were put on the golem to bring it to life, to activate it. So this is, in a microcosmic sense, it's basically what you're doing when you're doing this. And I can tell you now, don't underestimate this, and don't fuck with shit that you don't get, because I'm telling you, it works. Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to play the scare card. I'm just being honest. If you make a life, you take a life. And when I say that, that means when it's time, when you build an egregor, you are God. You've birthed this being. And then when it's time, you take its life and you bury it. Because if you don't, it's traveling and moving always. Mm-hmm. So some of the more intense things that I've done in the past, where I've literally took egregors and dolls and submerged them in 5-gallon Home Depot buckets with quick dry cement.
Wow.
I mean, this is the levels of sorcery and witchcraft that I'm involved in. That's what I do. And that's when I talk about witchcraft, this is the type of things that I can speak on. Mm-hmm. And there's plenty of different people, with different views, and some people might not agree with these views, but I'm just telling you that's what's done.
I have a question. So if you're talking about using, like, summoning an egregor, mm-hmm. and then giving it a task, and then once it completes its task, you finish it. Mm-hmm. What if, like you said, you don't finish it and it wanders, like you've given it its task, then you've given it nothing else to do? What do you think that what do you think that manifests as, or what do you think happens there? What do you think could happen there?
I mean, the possibilities are endless, because it's in your psyche that you created something that you did not put to rest.
Yeah.
So you got to remember, it's already in your mind.
Do you think it could turn on you?
Sure, it could have a degree. Like, that's why whenever I make them, there's certain things that I do. I'll never go over all of this, because it's just something I should be putting out there for everybody, because it's secrets. It's knowledge that I've learned for years. But yeah, when I put them in, there's a kill switch on everything that I make.
Right.
There's a way that it dissipates its energy. There's certain incantations that are laid into the object. So, God forbid, there's a fail-safe, but right. I've never had to worry about that, because I'm always responsible with what I've made.
Right.
And who I've made it on, or what the things I need to do with these things. This is also where I was explaining to you guys a couple of weeks ago about the artificial elementals, and which is a way of sending the energy of the elements out on the aether as a time release mechanism. And so at certain times, I'll be like, okay, I'm putting all this into this shape, and it's going to be in the element of water because of emotion, and I want to invoke heavy emotion on this situation. So then I will send that out, and then there'll be a time when it releases over the area that I want it to be. This is where you start doing magic abroad. Mm-hmm. So England, New Hampshire, wherever it is, it just goes, and mm-hmm. you send it. But then after so much time of doing that, you set a time for it to basically implode upon itself.
Okay. And
dissipate. So that's also taught to you in working with elementals, which is also like an egregor.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm like looking through the questions. We have one already that we went over. Can you explain and talk about the use of poppets and sympathetic magic? We just did. Can poppets work even if you don't have any personal item of the person?
Intent is really a lot to do with it. And again, in the 21st century, it doesn't have to be nail clippings or fetish. Fetish, by the way, is another magical term. Unlike the fetish that most of us think in the kinky world, like a lot of American Indians would wear what are called fetish jewelry, and you'll see they'll have like a little bear, and they'll have a dolphin, they'll have little animals, and these are fetishes because they're imbuing the power of these animals upon them by wearing them.
Yeah.
Which is like a totem pole. Same kind of concept. But yes, in the 21st century, you can totally do that. There's ways of doing it. You have to have a background in magic and understanding all the things that I just talked about beforehand. But also, in the digital age, we've got so much in front of us. You know, as long as you're bringing down an image to work on, you can do that. I actually, I don't want to go there, but I'm trying to think in my mind how to bring this up. People get caught up in practices of old, and they're really important that you do learn them. But there's so many things out there in the modern age that we can use. Realize that the minute somebody gives me a signature, that is exactly that. Because what is a signature? How many people practice their signature? And when you practice a signature, what are you doing? You're invoking you into that line work.
Right.
If you pull a signature and use it in a poppet, it's insanely good.
Yeah.
You know, that's really good stuff. But at the very least, I've done things where I've taken photographs of people, printed them out of just regular paper, poured planetary oil on it. Reverse side, I'd put parasigillum on it of the specific planet, light it on fire, burn it up into hot wax, and that melts into the doll that I'm making.
Someone wrote in that they wanted to know if you recommended buying or making a poppet.
Make it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Anytime you can put more energy into a situation, make it. You know, if I was going to breathe life into a poppet as well, and I wanted to, you know, obviously it's supposed to be a specific person, I would channel that person first, and I would breathe life into it as that person.
Okay, I hear that. I've got a question that just popped up, and I'll go to it in a second. But yeah, I'm just listening to. I'm trying to listen to you at the same time that came up.
Mm-hmm.
Can you reiterate that last section just for me, so I can hear what you said? Because this came.
No, it was just about making a poppet or buying one. But what I had said was that if I, you know, because we were talking about how intent is the most important thing, I was saying that if I was going to breathe life in a poppet, I would channel the person that I was making the poppet for, so that I breathe the life into the poppet as them, so it's like their breath in there. Sure,
you could do that. I mean, that's a bit tricky, but you could totally do that. And I am very much about the idea of making them. At the very least, I don't care if you sew horribly or what, but you can literally make it out of a pillowcase. In England, they would make knot dollies. So they basically took string and they would tie them all together, and then tie little knots for the feet and knots for the hands, and then they would manipulate that for the magic.
Right.
So we have a question here from Grey Ghost. God, it's hard to read in this thing. On sympathetic magic, how do you close off from getting inundated with others' energy? Well, that specifically is pre-ritual. If I'm doing that work, you can bet your bottom dollar that I have called my quarters, I've cut a cone, or I'm in a temple that's consecrated, and that's not ever going to happen. You should always, you know what you're doing and be ready for that. You know, it's that same concept of, like, I hate using, because some people don't like them at all, but they're like firearms. If a person that owns a firearm, a lot of times what they're going to be, if they're smart, they're looking at their rounds before they put them in the chamber, because sometimes they can stovepipe. Mm-hmm. Stovepipe is when they eject wrong and they cause the chamber from closing. So you know your ammo. Clear your ammo. Clean it, because you don't want dirt, residue. Same thing magically. You walk into your space, it's set. The other thing is, do either of you see an intersection between astrology and planetary magic?
Yes.
100%. Even now, just because I don't do what she's an adept in her realm. She's no BS. She knows astrology. I know astrology, but in a fifth grade sense. I know my triplicities. I know my ruling planets. I know my signs. I know, where they sit, the detriments, things like that. But I don't go into the levels that she does. And of course they intersect because they were brother and sister.
Yeah.
I mean, planetary magic and astrology go hand in hand.
Yeah, because I mean, if I'm thinking about planetary magic, I'm thinking about the archetypes of the planet. And for me, astrology is like, how are they all playing with each other right now?
Yeah.
And is that going to fuck up my spell?
See, and like also when you start going into that, this is the only difference is, and I discussed this I think at first episode, is magically when we deal with the planets, we deal with the seven ancients because the moderns are eras in time. Okay, with that being said, the astrology is still played into magic. Every time I make a client a candle, I know their sun, moon, and rising signs, or the person I'm working on for them. The last question from Seeker 773 is, where can we get that $500 poppet mold? I can hook you up. You'd have to get a hold of me, but I can definitely turn you on to getting that made. They are $500 though, no BS. But they're about they're between 8 and 10 inches long and about 4 inches wide. So they're a big doll.
Yeah. We have some psychometry questions. What items work best with psychometry for accuracy? I think that metal or jewelry, because metal conducts energy better than maybe like... I mean, the thing is, if it's someone that passed away, the items that you have are probably going to be like something that they wrote you a letter. Well, we just talked about how a signature is one of the best ways you can invoke someone. If you have, other things that we hold on to with deceased ones, it's usually going to be like jewelry, or something that's a little bit, I don't know, just like more of a sturdy item. So, I mean, I think with psychometry, just go with metal. If you can get a signature, that's fine too. Or even if it's like a teddy bear, if it's a child that you're trying to tap into, but they put a lot of love into it, I think that could work as well. But I think that, it should be relevant to how much it reminds you of that person, and what that person's relationship with that item was too. That will have an effect on the reading. But definitely, I'm a big fan of anything metal as well. You could also use a photo and just, put your hand over it and close your eyes and pay attention to what you're feeling. With psychometry, it's like, okay, I'm holding this and nothing's coming to me. Nothing's coming. Okay, well, it's because you got to chill out and you have to clear your mind and then pay attention to, now that I've cleared my mind, now that I've gotten in touch with myself and I know what I feel like, I'm going to open myself up to whatever message is coming through and see how that shifts. So I don't think it's like a magical thing where you pick it up and it's like all of a sudden, unless you've got some serious gifts that are coming through that you have to learn how to train. That's a whole other type of problem. But if you're just trying to hold something and get information and you're just like almost like waiting for it and expecting it to come, like almost with an impatience or with an apprehension, I don't think it's going to work. It's all about relaxing and clearing out your energy field and then inviting the information to come through.
That's important because this is the same thing with ritual magic. It's all about getting there and waiting. It's all about taking your time. It's not, you got to remember as a whole, and I again, she's adept in that field more than me, but as I'm going to lump it in the magical ball. Magic is non-linear. That means to us that magic does not know time. Just because you're like flumming up around the mouth because you want something so bad, like you want to bite into that steak or that apple or whatever, that doesn't mean that it's going to come any quicker. When you do spellcraft, the last thing you need to be worrying about is when it's coming.
Yeah.
Because if that's what you're doing, then you might as well just go try another way of doing it. Because magic is not about time. It's about the absence of time.
Yeah. And you have to be, you can't just be patient. Yeah. You have to be patient and trusting. Like there's been times where I'm like, this needs to manifest. And it's just like, I have to remind myself, like it will, but you gotta, I also believe that like when I'm casting some sort of a spell, that it is with divine timing, that, I don't get to decide when it happens because my guides or the people that are helping me execute the magic that I'm trying to invoke are going to figure out when I'm ready for it. You know, when I was just starting to get involved in this industry, and I was just starting to like make content, if I was interviewing the people on my podcast that I'm interviewing now, I would have been manic as shit. I would have been fucking crazy, like, like, oh my God, like, it would have been gross. And I think that, like, it's given to you when you find your dignity.
Yeah, when you're ready, and when you're ready for it.
Exactly.
You know? Christian McLean, Renee, what's a good method to develop psychic abilities, or do you have a book that you can recommend?
It depends on what kind of psychic ability you're trying to exercise or work with. I mean, I think that most psychics are empathic, but I really just recommend researching the clairs. When it's hard, because when people ask me to recommend a book, I'm not a person who likes to read a lot about the philosophies other people have. I like reference book. I like I like reference books, and I like the information, and I like it to be quick so I can start doing the work and figuring out what it means to me. So that, like, in that case, I would look at, like, I think I got a book called Clairvoyance for Beginners, and that was the only book I ever got. But after that, I just started to reference, like, what is clairaudient? What is this? What is that? What is this? How do I meditate with it to realize what I am strong or what I'm weak at? Knowing what the clairs are is going to help you tremendously so that you know what sort of meditation you need to be doing. If you're a person who hears a text message before it comes through, or has a lot of ringing or popping in your ear, you're probably clairaudient. Okay, so how do I work with that? I recommend sitting in a quiet room, not putting on any meditation music, and allowing your ears to travel to the different sounds that are happening within your house, outside of your house. Can you hear birds? Is there traffic? And then just letting your hearing bounce around a little bit until maybe you start to hear things from the other side. Or maybe at a specific time, someone walks by you and you hear their conversation, but the thing that they're saying is pertinent to your thoughts. And so that's a way that clairaudience can come through. If you're clairvoyant, if you're a person who visualizes things really well, who dreams a lot, okay, so I would recommend trying to ask for psychic messages within your dreams, keeping a dream journal. You could practice looking at auras. One of the ways you can do that is by holding your hand up against a white piece of paper and kind of, focus on the energy happening in between your fingers without focusing on the detail. So it's sort of like, I don't know how to explain this other than, how sometimes you're really tired but your eyes are wide awake, where you're just like kind of a zombie. Mm-hmm. Like, you want almost that, and then you try to see, okay, are any colors coming through in between my fingers? Closing your eyes and trying to visualize the room you're in as the same room but everything's green. Those are ways you can exercise your clairvoyance. If you are clairsentient, go into a meditative state and tell your guides they have permission to touch you. You have permission to touch my arm. Okay, so I feel something on my arm. Is it warm? Does it feel like a little prick? That's kind of how you can learn what your guides feel like when they're touching you. So this is why it's important to read the different clairs. Oh, yeah, no, that's resonating with me a lot. That's not resonating with me so much. Okay, how do I meditate with this?
So when you say resonate, does that mean that's what I'm into?
No, like, that's what feels right to me. That I feel like I'm understanding this information because it is reflective of how I feel. Not like, oh, this seems cool. Like, I think it's like an internal thing. Like, that makes sense.
Talk a little bit about that, because I think that's... I would like people to understand that it's not resonating does not mean, I'm into that, my friends are into that, I want to try that too.
Yeah,
so talk about that.
I mean, I think in this context, it's really like, what are the symptoms of these different clairs, and am I experiencing them?
Tell us. Can you? We've got time here.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't got the wave from the manager yet, so. Talk to us about the clairs. Tell me about in a nutshell, each one, please.
Okay, well, so there's the ability to see psychically. That's clairvoyance. The ability to hear psychic message. That's clairaudient. The ability to smell psychic sense. This is like when you smell your grandma's perfume out of nowhere, or you smell your grandfather's pipe out of nowhere. That's clairolfactory. There's clair. This one I always butcher the pronunciation of. I think it's called like clairgustance, but that's when you taste something that you're not actually eating, or like you get the taste of metal in your mouth all of a sudden. And it's like, okay, that could be an indication that like there's some sort of message that's coming through. Or if you feel almost like you have just like you'll salivate out of nowhere, but you're not really triggered by anything. It could be that like there's some sort of entity that's trying to make contact with you, and like that's the clearest path that they see. Then there's also like clairsentient, and now this can go on for a while. There are arguments like that there are more clairs than just like the senses that we're used to, because I've already gone over sight, smell, sound, hearing, taste, and now I'm going over over feeling, which is clairsentient. And that's like what I talked about sort of with like being skilled at psychometry, is when you can sort of like feel energy, pick up information through the energy that you feel.
So what about like when you are talking to someone and all of a sudden you get a flash of an image?
That would be clairvoyant.
Over them, around them.
That'd be clairvoyant because you're seeing it, even if it's in your mind's eye.
And it just like it just pops up. See, now you don't hear me talking about this stuff because I'm just very I get very factual. But that doesn't mean I don't have experiences, but I'd rather not claim one of the clairs because I don't want to just be another person claiming one of the clairs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course.
I keep it to myself.
Yeah.
But it's good to hear that. So if you like see imagery around a person, do you tell them?
Me? Well, okay, so here's the thing. I've done a lot of training so that I don't pick up on stuff unless I'm working. Unless it directly pertains to me, it's not often that I will have a vision. The only time I can think of that this happened to me where I saw a vision when I wasn't working was I was in Las Vegas. I was at Viva Las Vegas, that festival, that like Rockabilly festival, and they were marrying people. And there was a really young girl marrying her boyfriend, and I just walked past it and I didn't think about anything. And all of a sudden, and I was just trying to walk with my boyfriend, who is not into this at all, like, unless it's to make funny dick magic jokes, then he's all about it. But we were walking, and this
$3.50 an hour
little old woman who what I knew was the grandmother of this girl was like pulling on my arm. She was hysterical, and she was like, you have to stop this. You have to stop this wedding. You have to stop this. Like he's abusive to her, blah, 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 blah. And I was just trying to walk and act normal. And I was like, oh my fucking God. And I was like, I can't do that. Like, I can't go to this woman on her wedding day and be like, oh yeah, like your dead grandma doesn't approve. Like, you know what I mean?
So what did you say? Hey, grandma, fuck off. I've got something
I just tried to send her, I tried to send her love, and I just was like, I didn't even really, communicate with her. I think maybe I said, I'm sorry, I can't. And then I started to build up that psychic barrier. But she broke through, and it messed with me for days, where I thought, should I have gone to say something? Like, is he going to go kill her tonight? Like, what, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what that was about. And I as we continued to walk around, I played out scenarios in my mind in which I could get away with saying something to her that wouldn't make me look or feel insane. And I couldn't think of a way to do it. It seemed like an inappropriate boundary to cross too with a stranger.
Definitely is.
So that's another thing. Like, I don't want to cross anyone's boundary or threshold. I think that I'm very mindful of the fact that when I tell people I'm psychic, there can be an uneasiness where people are like, fuck, is she reading me?
Really?
I think that it does.
I hear it so much that I'm just like, okay.
Well, yeah, but this is like your it's all very natural for us and for people who are involved in this world. And, people who are involved in this world probably know a little bit about how to guard and how to shield so that they're not projecting onto other people. But I think when people believe in this stuff or are superstitious of this stuff but don't necessarily feel well versed in it, I think there can be like an uneasiness about what someone can know about you. It's almost like a vulnerability that people I don't think are always prepared for.
Valerie wants to know how how would someone find out they're Claire?
I mean, again, just reading and researching about it. What are the side effects? You know, a lot of the times, you know, for people who are empathic, that's a lot like being clairsentient, just knowing things and picking up on things. So this could be a situation where it's like, do you feel anxiety that you can't explain when you're in the room with someone who seems like maybe they're anxious? Do you have emotional shifts that come out of nowhere that you can't find a logical explanation for? I realize that what I'm explaining could also be tied to very real mental disorders. So I never want to I never want to discredit that that's a thing, because it is a very real thing. I think that it can even be hard for certain people to decipher if they're having some psychic stuff going on or if they're having mental health issues.
This is another thing that I'd like to address with this. It's in the same pocket, and it's about talking to you about it.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk about that right now. It's so hard to do this because I have to remember I'm a store owner and I'm a business owner, and I'm not trying to deflate anybody.
Yeah.
Or discredit them. I'm putting this out now so you can hear me, but what are your thoughts on, like, I mean, when people say that they're an empath, I mean, my answer to that is everyone is.
Yeah.
You know, because, I mean, saying you're an empath, to me, when someone says they're an empath, it's the acknowledgement that they're an empath. It doesn't mean that they all of a sudden are, and it's like this great gift. It's actually, I believe that it's something that you are acknowledging is with you now, and now you're going to actively utilize this.
Yeah.
You know, but I've also, you know, I'm from the goth scene, in case you can't tell, especially back in the old days. And, you know, we'd always say that, you know, are you empathic or a goth? Because, you know, the music and the poetry and the, you know, the symbology of the gothic industry.
Yeah.
You know, it just kind of funny that it goes hand in hand. But what I'm saying is, don't you think that we all are? It's just as a matter of a switch being turned on.
For the most part, but I also think that sociopaths are a thing, and I don't feel like they have empathy or are empathic, or I don't know, or they're tuned into it weird. I've seen empaths who tune into hate, and that's what makes them feel alive. It doesn't mean they're not empathic. So, yeah.
But we all are empaths. It's just, and this is going back to Valerie. All the Claires are in you. It's just what one are you going to turn on? What are
your strengths? What are you?
Yeah.
What is already sort of something that you have intuitively experienced or felt on some level? If you feel like you know, can sense if there's someone watching you in the room, like an entity, but there's not, like if you can feel someone watching you or looking at you, an entity or a real person, that can be clairsentient. Sorry, I laughed, but it was because our shadow people were being funny, pretending that there was things behind them.
Who's pretending?
Yeah, exactly. But then it's
put
like,
them there.
if you smell stuff randomly, well, like, okay, that's another clear olfactory situation. But you'll probably have like maybe 2 or 3 that are stronger. I would say for me, I'm mostly clairvoyant and clairsentient, but some of my most profound messages have been clairaudient messages. I remember one time it was here. I had just done like a psychic's floor wash in the tarot room, and some lady sat down in front of me, and we were like, I had just started the clock, and it was like, some entity came next to me and said, she has a UTI, it's about to turn into a kidney infection. And I was like, you have a UTI and it's about to turn into a kidney infection. And she looked at me and she said, I just got back from the doctor, it already is a kidney infection. And I was like, well, great, your guides are here, what do you want to know about? But I was like, that was one of the craziest things that's ever happened to me. And it's my clairaudience, which I don't feel is my strongest psychic sense.
And I love that you used olfactory, and I think we touched on this before. Over time, we're going to keep touching on things. They're going to come back up, so you can't get away from that.
Well, repetition is how you learn.
Yeah, Joy in Repetition was a great song by Prince, actually. But the olfactories. What are the olfactories? I mean, is this a word that you've heard of before besides it being the clear olfactory? The olfactory is actually part of the brain. It's a sense, and it's like, for me, best way to explain it. If I smell somebody washing their car and it's sunny out and the water is on the pavement, it picks up a scent.
Mm-hmm.
And that scent drives me right back to the 1970s in New England. That's your olfactories,
Mm-hmm.
because they're recalling memories by scents that are triggering them off in your brain.
Yeah.
Which and that is a very magical thing.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to utilize your olfactory senses is just awesome. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I would try, I always, if I want to know that I have some sort of psychic ability, I'll ask for it. So if you want to smell your grandma's pie or so, oh, God damn it, why did I say that? Nothing. Like if you want to smell something that your grandma used to bake, then ask if she'll bring that scent to you or something like that, and then allow it to see if it comes through. I usually say within 48 hours. I'll say, please bring me this smell within 48 hours. And I know that we just talked about being patient, but I just mean it's because like you're trying to trial and error your abilities.
But at the same time, don't trial and error them to be like, oh, if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. That doesn't.
No,
maybe
keep
that
asking.
Doesn't mean,
yeah.
And also, you got to remember, the universe. It goes back to spell work. I had somebody call me this morning, being like, the candle should be done tomorrow. When will it arrive? And I'm like, this isn't TV. And this isn't Stop and Shop, or you're not going to Target to buy a product. This is a magical act, and that's why, if a person is not getting that out of their conscious mind and into the subconscious, it's probably not going to manifest. You've got to do your work and step away from the plate.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just mean, like, if you're trying, like, I just use that when I'm trying to have a call and response. Like, hey, show me this symbol.
Yeah, well, that's
within this amount of time. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like a communication thing. But also, like, sometimes I'll just be really broad. Like, if sometimes I'll see orbs a lot.
They're seeing orbs like crazy right now. Do you know that? Instagram, this entire time, people have been watching on Instagram.
Really?
They're saying orbs are flying all around us right now.
Aw, I love that. So there will be times where, that's funny that it came up then.
Mm-hmm.
There will be times where I'm seeing a lot of orb activity, and I'm used to seeing at least 2 or 3 orbs a day. But sometimes it'll not happen. And I'll notice I've gone a few days without seeing an orb, and so I'll ask for some because they bring me comfort. Hey, show me some orbs.
It's pretty cool stuff. So we're starting to wind down. I wanted to say, coming weeks we're going to have specific topics. I'm going to add a topic that I didn't add with you guys yet. But next week I want to talk specifically, this is a dirty word in the magic community, but I want to talk about sacrifice. And I'm talking about blood sacrifice, animal sacrifice, and why it's ridiculous and why it is not valid anymore. It's something that needs to be discussed, and people need to get with the times, and it's.
And I'll talk about animal communication.
And it's important. It's important. Now, I'm prefacing this with next week. This is not about hurting animals. This is about not doing that.
Yeah. No.
And why it doesn't work anymore. And I'm not saying it just for that reason of the animal, but for why it is a dated choice to make.
Mm-hmm.
It's not reality, and animals are gods on top of it.
Oh my God,
They're amazing.
she? Look at it. Like, why does this exist?
I know. Look at that.
Oh my God, I can't.
So there she is. There we are. You guys have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Even though some of us don't really agree with why we have it anymore.
Yeah.
But still enjoy the time with your loved ones and with your family.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're having to be alone because you're self-isolating, do something that makes you feel good, because it can be depressing. The holidays, for people who feel especially lonely right now, it's hard. And these eclipses are making everyone feel even more sad and weird and depressed. I looked at the astrology for tomorrow, and it's depressing. So focus on the things that make you feel good and make you feel happy.
Enjoy good times.
You
Enjoy
can-
everything that you guys are going to be doing in this holiday season coming up.
You can find us online, betwixtheshadows.com, on
That's
Instagram,
right.
at betwixtheshadow. I'm rainbowglitterstar.com, at rainbowglitterstar.
And we have the Crooked Path _LA.
Yeah.
And be good to yourselves and each other. And we are out of here.
Thecrookedpathstore.com.